Good morning, and can I welcome everyone to this, the 24th meeting of the Standards Procedure and Public Appointments Committee in 2024. I have received apologies from Ruth Maguire this morning, and can I welcome Rona Mackay, who's attending as a substitute for Ruth. I have also received apologies from Annie Wells, MSP. Our first agenda item is to carry on with this, the second day of consideration of the Scottish Elections Representation and Reform Bill, Stage 2. I'll briefly explain the procedure we will be following during today's proceedings for anyone watching. Members should have with them a copy of the bill, the marshalled list and the groupings. These documents are available on the bill webpage on the Scottish Parliament's website for anyone observing. I will call each amendment individually in the order of the marshalled list. The member who lodged the amendment should either move it or say not moved when it is called. If that member doesn't move it, any other member present may do so. The groupings of amendments sets out the amendments in the order in which they will be debated. There will be one debate on each group of amendments. In each debate, I will call the member who lodged the first amendment in the group to speak to and move that amendment and to speak to all of the other amendments in the group. I will then call other members with amendments in that group to speak to, but not move, their amendments and to speak to other amendments in the group if they so wish. I will then call any other members who wish to speak in the debate. Members wishing to speak should indicate that by catching either myself or the clerk's attention. I will then call the Minister, if he has not already spoken in the debate. Finally, I will call the member who moved the first amendment in the group to wind up and indicate whether he or she wishes to press the amendment or to withdraw it. If the amendment is pressed, I will put the question on the amendment. If a member wishes to withdraw an amendment after it has been moved and debated, I will ask whether any member present objects, and if there is an objection, I will immediately put the question on the amendment. Later amendments in a group are not debated again, and when they are reached, if they are moved, I will put the question on them straight away. If there is a division, only the committee members are entitled to vote. Voting is by a show of hands. It is important that members keep their hands raised clearly until the clerk has recorded their names. If there is a tie, I must exercise a casting vote, and my policy will be to use my casting vote against any amendment. The committee is also required to consider and decide on each section and schedule of the bill and the long title, and I will put the question on each of these provisions at the appropriate point. We now move to section 29, and I will call Amendment 70, that is in the name of Ross Greer, grouped with Amendments 71, 54, 75, 76, 77, 55 and 56. Ross Greer to move Amendments 70 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, colleagues. You'll be glad to know that I'm only going to speak to my two amendments in this group, and even then quite briefly. Amendment 70 is an example of giving examples in legislation. I think the sparing use of providing examples in legislation to demonstrate, to make clear intent, particularly to those who come after us, is often quite a useful thing to do. So 70 has that classic legislative language of without prejudice to the above, and it then states that automatic voter registration in education establishments, schools, universities, colleges, could be one of the kind of activities undertaken with the funding, the powers in this section. There's huge amounts of evidence of the positive impact of automatic voter registration. It is often far more cost effective than campaigns to encourage people to register individually in their own time. Put bluntly, education establishments are a captive audience. There's plenty of potential here. For example, I think there's a lot of potential for the automatic registration of young people at the point at which they're issued with their SQA candidate number. There's evidence elsewhere. Some American states do very good work. For example, when people receive their driver's licence at the DMV, they'll be automatically registered to vote at the same time. So it's not a prescriptive amendment. It doesn't mandate that this is one of the activities undertaken, but it points towards it as an example. So it's what I would describe as a nudging amendment, nudging in what I believe to be the right direction, the intended direction for this section. And 71 simply points out that due regard should be given to the Equality Act in this area, to recognise the fact that some of the groups with the lowest participation rate, or lower than the average participation rate, are groups defined by characteristics protected under the Equality Act. Most obviously age, young people have a lower participation rate, and also disabled people, which is relevant to other sections of the bill as well. So that's the intent behind both of those amendments. Thanks, Convener.
move it.
I move the amendment. Thank you.
Jeremy Balfour to speak to Amendment 54 and other amendments in the group.
Good morning, Convener, Minister, colleagues. I intend only to speak to the one in my name, number 54, which is in regard to the Elected Office Fund. As most colleagues will be aware, the Elected Office Fund is there to support and to encourage those with disability to be able to take part in elections in a way that is similar to others who do not have disability. I am pleased to say that this is something that has been pioneered out of Scotland and, interestingly, has now been picked up in other jurisdictions within the Commonwealth. The reason for bringing the amendment this morning, Convener, is that, disappointingly, the Westminster Government did get rid of the Access to Elected Office Fund for the last election that took place earlier this year. I appreciate this government has committed to support both the Scottish Parliament elections coming up in 14 months' time, but we do not know how future governments will look at this. I think to have it within statute protects both local council elections and both Scottish Parliament elections going forward, and allows those with disability to be able to take part in an election in a fair way. I personally have never used this fund, but I have now got evidence from Inclusion Scotland that at least 6 or 7 people that were elected at the last local elections because of this fund that would not have stood. I think that is a positive way forward, and I think cross-party and going forward, this is something we can use and maintain. In conclusion, can I also thank the Minister and his team for the help in regard to the wording of the amendment, and I hope the committee will be able to approve this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Doris to speak to Amendment 75 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, I want to set Amendments 75, 76, 77, 55 and 56 in context. The Electoral Commission report on the May 2022 Scottish Council elections drew attention to concerns about the level of rejection in some council wards. The highest rejection level being within Canal Ward in my constituency of Maryhill and Springburn, a rejection rate of 5.64%, over 3 times the average rejection rate. To put that in context, that means 1 in 18 votes cast in that ward were discarded, did not count. Across the country, it was 1 in 56. The most common reason for the ballot papers being rejected was expressing a first preference vote for more than one candidate, 64%. In other words, they've been unintentionally spoilt. It's not just Canal Ward. Kilpatrick was 2.5 times the national average. Clydebank Central, Coatbridge South and Dundee Coltside, all more than 4%, double the national average. There are long-term enduring issues with votes being cast by the electorate seemingly unaware their ballot papers were rejected, spoilt unintentionally in such circumstances. This group of amendments is an effort to comprehensively embed an approach to tackling such issues at the heart of the work of the Electoral Commission and to make votes count. I have, along with Canal Ward councillors Councillor Gow and McLaren, Glasgow's Lord Provost, had extensive dialogue with the Electoral Commission. I have also met with the previous Parliamentary Business Manager George Adam and the current Parliamentary Business Manager Jamie Hepburn on several occasions. Turning to the specifics of the amendments, Convener, Amendments 75 and 76 modify the Political Parties Elections and Referendums Act 2000. 75 inserts in Section 13 regarding voter education a specific reference to marking of ballot papers in elections. 76 inserts a new section on the Electoral Commission's annual report, so that the annual report to Parliament on devolved functions must contain information about what steps the Commission has taken to reduce the number of spoilt ballot papers in devolved Scottish elections. And Amendment 77 makes a new requirement that each 5-year plan which the Electoral Commission is required to submit to the Scottish Parliament corporate body on the Commission's activities in relation to Scottish Parliament and local elections must include how the Commission will aim to reduce the number of spoilt ballot papers at devolved Scottish elections. 75, 76 and 77 together, Convener, ensures the work on reducing the likelihood of unintentionally spoilt papers can take place both within and out with election cycles. Amendment 56 places a duty on the Electoral Commission to prepare and publish a strategy for reducing the number of spoilt ballot papers at each national ordinary election, local government election. Amendment 55 makes changes to the report which the Electoral Commission must prepare after the holding of nationwide Scottish Parliament and local government elections. It requires the Commission to report on the steps taken by the Commission and returning officers to promote public awareness about the election and how to vote in it, including in particular how to fill in a ballot paper. The report can also describe steps taken by others as the Commission considers appropriate, and that is important as the Electoral Commission works with relevant national and local partners on an ongoing basis. The Commission has a strategic overview but is not always the delivery partner. Together, the 5 amendments in my name within the group offers a comprehensive approach in legislative terms to do all we can to ensure when votes are cast in devolved Scottish elections that they count and they are not inadvertently spoilt. It also ensures the Election Commission can take forward these legislative provisions in a flexible way. I firmly believe this approach can help assist not only the communities that I represent, such as in Canal Ward, but other communities with similar issues across Scotland, ensure their votes are not only cast, but also count, and their voices are heard. I would urge members to support the amendments in my name, Convener.
I'm grateful. I've had no other indication that any other member wishes to speak, so good morning. Can I come to you, Minister?
Thank you, Convener. Can I say happily I will not take too long with this group either, and I'm also very happy to say I'm pleased to urge members to support all of the amendments in this group, which should assist voter education and increase democratic engagement. I support Ross Greer's Amendment 70, as I recognise the challenges that often exist ensuring registration of students. On Amendment 71, ministers already have to take into account the impact of their decisions generally under the Equality Act 2010, but I'm of the view there is no disbenefit in supporting that amendment. Turning to Bob Doris's amendments 55 and 56, 75, 76 and 77, I'm very pleased to be able to discuss these with him previously. It is clearly a matter of significant concern, Convener, if anyone loses their vote in error. And to Mr Doris's credit, he has been pursuing this issue of spoiled ballot papers in local elections for some time. I'm very happy to support these amendments and very much hope that they help lead to a reduction in spoiled ballot paper rates. It's important to recognise, of course, though, Convener, that it's not only the Commission working on this issue. Returning officers in particular have a vital role in ensuring appropriate descriptions of the voting process are available in polling places and in training staff to give voters the information they need to complete the ballot paper so that their vote can be counted. On Jeremy Balfour's Amendment 54, I've been very pleased to be able to work with him on this amendment. The access to elected office fund is universally popular, and rightly so. Mr Balfour has reminded us it's been so effective that others are learning from our experience in seeking to implement similar funds. As committee members will be aware, the fund pays for practical support to allow disabled people to fully participate in the political process. I'm very pleased with the feedback that we've had from elected representatives who say they would not have stood for election without the support of the fund. The Government took steps to set up the fund to be run at arm's length by Inclusion Scotland, who have the knowledge and capacity to run it so that it was tailored to the needs of individuals. Jeremy Balfour's amendment will place it on the secure footing it deserves, and I'm very pleased to support it. I was also pleased to see the Electoral Commission welcome this change in their briefing to the paper on the bill last week, and I would urge committee members to support all amendments in this group.
I'm grateful. Ross Greer to wind up, press or withdraw Amendment 70.
Thanks, Convener. I'm grateful for the Minister's support. Glad he's supporting the other amendments in this group from colleagues. I think they're very worthwhile as well, and I'll be pressing Amendment 70.
So the question is that Amendment 70 be agreed. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Yep. Call Amendment 71 in the name of Ross Greer, already debated with Amendment 70. Ross Greer to move or not move?
Move, please.
Question is that Amendment 71 be agreed. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Question is that Section 29 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 44 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 23. Minister to move formally. Question is that Amendment 44 be agreed. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Call Amendment 54 in the name of Jeremy Balfour, already debated with Amendment 70. Jeremy Balfour to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
Question is that Amendment 54 be agreed. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Question is that sections 30 to 37 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 45 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 23. Minister to move formally.
Move, Convener.
Question is that Amendment 45 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Question is that Section 38 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Question is that Sections 39 and 40 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Excellent. Call Amendment 46 in the name of the Minister, grouped with Amendment 47. Minister to move Amendment 46 and speak to both amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendments 46 and 47 respond to concerns raised by the Electoral Commission and Police Scotland on the wording of the Bill's provisions in relation to digital imprints on campaign material. Both organisations consider that there should not be a direct reference to the police having regard to Commission guidance, so as to better reflect the operational independence of the police. The wording in the bill on introduction was derived from the UK Elections Act 2022 provisions, but I am pleased to respond to the concerns we've heard by removing the references in question, and I would urge the committee to support them. I can say, though, Convener, in practical terms, I would like to reassure you the Commission will, of course, still produce guidance in this area, and it would be a question for the police on how they interpret their duties. And with that, Convener, I move Amendment 46 in my name.
Excellent. I've had no indication any other member wishes to speak, so Minister to wind up formally.
Nothing else to add, Convener.
Excellent. Question is that Amendment 46 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 47 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. Minister to move formally.
Move, Convener.
Question is that Amendment 47 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is that Section 41 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is that Sections 42 to 44 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. Excellent. Call Amendment 72 in the name of Ross Greer, grouped with Amendments 73 and 74. Ross Greer to move Amendment 72 and to speak to all amendments in this group.
Thank you, Convener. Move Amendment 72. I should say from the outset I won't press these three to a vote. I've had some useful engagement with the Minister. I think there's potential for a partial agreement at least on this, but I recognise there's some points to work through. But to summarise the purpose of this, I believe it is desirable for the public to have a clear understanding of what electoral boundaries they sit within, and where there's a change in those electoral boundaries, obviously it takes time to communicate that. But also on a very practical level, the successful functioning of our democracy and our elections depends on political parties being able to function well, and political parties do need a reasonable degree of notice for any changes in boundaries for the purpose of selection of candidates, any internal reorganisation that we require. So quite simply, the intention of these amendments is to set that 18-month deadline before an election for the completion of the relevant boundary review, so that both the public and the parties participating in an election have the notice that they would require to do so fully informed and fully prepared.
I'm grateful. I've had no indication that any other member wishes to speak. Minister, can I come to you?
Certainly, Convener, I'm very pleased to have been able to discuss these amendments with Ross Greer. I am supportive of the principle behind them. I see the benefits in ensuring there is an 18-month period before elections where constituents, candidates and administrators, and indeed political parties as well, have certainty around boundaries. Mr Greer says he's not moving any of his amendments today. I can say we're more than willing to support Amendment 72 today, but the wording of Amendments 73 and 74 would see the 18-month rule applied to the next set of scheduled local government elections in 2027, which would clearly not be practical in terms of Boundary Scotland's work after the current Scottish Parliament review is completed. I am very clear that this change in approach, while it's a sensible one, can only apply from the local government elections scheduled for 2032. Mr Greer has indicated he will not be moving those amendments, but I will be very happy to work with him to ensure that these amendments can be brought forward again at stage 3 on the basis I've laid out, where I'll be very happy to support them. Convener, this area now having been opened up, I also believe that if this change is happening for council elections, it's sensible to apply the same for future Scottish Parliament reviews too, and I would suggest that we will probably end up revisiting that at stage 3 as well. So I'm happy to we can support Amendment 72. It's clear up to Mr Greer whether or not he moves it, but whilst supporting the principle, we will return to the rest of it at stage 3.
I'm very grateful, Minister. Ross Greer, to wind up, press or withdraw Amendment 72.
Thank you, Convener. I will strike my previous remarks from the record and bank the Minister's support by pressing 72. I'm very grateful for the support, and I will come back at stage 3 with redrafted equivalents to 73 and 74.
The question is that Amendment 72 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 73 in the name of Ross Greer, already debated with Amendment 72. Ross Greer, to move or not move? And call Amendment 74 in the name of Ross Greer, already debated with Amendment 72. Ross Greer, to move or not move?
Not move.
The question is that Section 45 be agreed. Are we all agreed? I now call Amendment 75 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 70. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 75 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Call Amendment 76 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 70. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 76 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Excellent. I now call Amendment 77 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 70. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 77 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Call Amendment 48 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 23. Minister, to move formally.
Convener.
The question is that Amendment 48 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
And the question is that Section 46 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 55 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 70. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 55 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Call Amendment 56 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 70. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 56 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Grateful. Now call Amendment 49 in the name of the Minister, grouped with Amendments 50, 51, 52 and 53. Minister, to move Amendment 49 and to speak to all amendments in the group.
Convener, thank you. I'm aware that there are quite a substantial number of amendments here, but they are fairly straightforward, so I shouldn't take too long. I ask the committee to support the amendments in the group which provide for the Electoral Management Board for Scotland to be constituted as a body corporate, including the required adjustment to the funding model. The Electoral Management Board has been successful in supporting the smooth running of elections in Scotland as a statutory committee, and these amendments will mean that the board is accountable directly to the Scottish Parliament. This will consolidate its independence and build upon its strengths. The amendments reflect the points made to the committee by the convener of the Electoral Management Board at stage 1, as well as the committee's recommendations. They also provide for 2 deputy conveners, and the rules for membership and staffing are fully set out in a new schedule to the Local Electoral Administration Scotland Act 2011. Provision is also made for the Electoral Management Board to submit a 5-year plan on its activities to Parliament, and for ministers to be able to ask the EMB to consider specific issues. This could, for example, include matters around spoiled ballot papers and the script used at polling stations. This new framework has been developed with the support of the convener of the Electoral Management Board and parliamentary officials. I acknowledge the remarks made by the convener of the Electoral Management Board in a letter to the committee sent last week. The convener questioned the policy of allowing electoral professionals from elsewhere in the UK to be members of the board. I want to make it clear that the amendments in no way require returning officers or electoral returning officers from other parts of the UK to have to be, by necessity, appointed as members of the Electoral Management Board. The amendment merely expands the possible pool of candidates. Paragraph 2.5 of the new schedule added by Amendment 51 is designed to ensure that the new membership as a whole still has Scottish experience. It states, when appointing members, the convener is to have regard to the desirability of the membership taken as a whole, having a broad range of experience in relation to A, different local authority areas, including different kinds of areas throughout Scotland, and B, the different constituencies and regions provided for Scottish parliamentary elections. While the pool is made bigger, the convener will still have to appoint a board which, taken together, has relevant Scottish experience. Very grateful to the input of the EMB in pulling together these amendments. They will give rise to a new chapter. The board will be even better equipped to the running of elections in Scotland, elections in which the voter can have full confidence in the results. And with that, convener, I move Amendment 49.
I'm grateful. I've had no indication any other member wishes to contribute. Minister, to wind up.
Nothing else to add, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 49 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 50 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 49. Minister, to move formally.
Move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 50 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 51 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 49. Minister, to move formally.
Moved, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. It's the schedule, yes. There we go. And the question is that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Agreed. The question is that Section 47 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yep. Call Amendment 52 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 49. Minister, to move formally.
Moved, Convener.
And the question is that Amendment 52 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Call Amendment 53 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 49. Minister, to move formally.
Moved, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 53 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is that Sections 48 to 50 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is that the long title be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. And that ends Stage 2, consideration of the bill. I'm grateful to colleagues and the committee and to the Minister. Thank you. I will now close this meeting.